everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and we will discuss on what is transhumanism. We have our famous speaker, Mr. Adam, Mr. Jason. I think Tom will join. Mr. Adam, what you want to share with our audience?
Thank you very much, Sharif. As you know, transhumanism is one of my favourite topics and one of the subjects I find most compelling. I have been a transhumanism enthusiast since I was about 13 or 14 and have been a cultural observer of transhumanism and how it has evolved over the years, or decades even by now, since I am now in my early 30s. Transhumanism is a movement that espouses man's use of his own technological ingenuity in order to make themselves enhanced and with capabilities far beyond what nature originally afforded to us. Although you could argue that because we are of nature, then transhumanism and other technologically enabled extensions and enhancements are also of nature. So the dichotomy of nature versus artificial becomes paradoxical or non-existent, one could argue. So three examples of transhumanism's main tenets include super longevity, super happiness, and super intelligence, and numerous others, which those three are self-explanatory, really, using technology to live longer, happier, and smarter lives. And my first influential figure that helped me first get into transhumanism was Ray Kurzweil and some of his books like The Age of Spiritual Machines, and there was also a book written by people that was a response to that, Are We Spiritual Machines, and a book he wrote about called Fantastic Voyage, How to Live Long Enough to Live Forever, which was a book about healthy eating and lifestyles to try and ensure that you live long enough so that you survive into like 2040s or 2050s, by which time there'll be more better technologies and medications available to make you live even longer. So it's like a snowball effect. So he was a big primary influence on me, and then I got into the works of David Pearce some time after that, and I think overall David Pearce has been my biggest influence regarding my interest in transhumanism, even though Ray Kurzweil was the first. David Pearce is the biggest influence for me on the whole, and he's like me, he's a fellow Brit who lives down in Brighton. He's a philosopher, and he pioneered the idea that through transhumanism and technology, suffering could be abolished. If not abolished, then radically minimized, hopefully more and more as time goes on and we become better at mastering our technology. So someone like David Pearce would come under the super happiness camp, really. Abolition of suffering is probably the subculture within transhumanism I align the most with, and it's been interesting watching transhumanism over the years and over the past 20 years, because it started off as like around the 2000s, still quite optimistic, and it was still quite an optimistic. For me, it was very attractive for me as a troubled teenager, transhumanism. And David Pearce once noted that a lot of people who arrive at the suffering abolitionism movement are themselves quite troubled people who are suffering, like maybe people who have depression or mental illness or other ailments, and they see something like the hedonistic imperative manifesto as a way out. If I live long enough to benefit from this, then maybe things aren't so bad, and we live in a pretty exciting time if I can be a part of this. So as a bit of an unhappy, depressed teenager, transhumanism was very appealing to me back in the 2000s, and it was still very optimistic and what I call a bright right movement, and then recently I think transhumanism has become a bit of it's become soiled really, but I think it's a lot of people very quickly link it to Klaus Schwab and World Economic Forum. So transhumanism, the word is spoiled a bit really. So I usually just use the word futurist or something, but I still like the word transhumanism. And yeah, the abolition of suffering is the subculture of transhumanism I align the most with. So super longevity, super happiness, and super intelligence via our toolkit's getting bigger and bigger by the year, isn't it? Biotechnology, biochemistry, genetic engineering, CRISPR, psychopharmaceuticals. But I feel like there are lots of obstacles in society and culture that are blocking the way for potential progress. Like the war on drugs, for example, when you've got all these avenues that are just ours for the taking to improve ourselves, and hopefully, I don't know, we're all living at an exciting time, and I look forward to seeing how we master technology and make ourselves happier and more intelligent and longer living. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tom, what you want to share with our audience about transhumanism?
Yeah, it's like the thing where you can't use the word you're defining in that definition. I feel that's what transhumanism is. It's more of it's a framework around what we already are. If without technology, we naked apes would be extinct within a generation. Technology like clothing and shelter and weapons and things like that. That's what we are. And so you see a lot of people complaining or thinking that transhumans have a dark agenda, to take over the world. But the people that are complaining, or the trolls that are complaining about AI, transhumanism, are probably wearing glasses. They're using technology. They're wearing clothes. So it's a little difficult to define transhumanism, except for as Adam just did, because it's just kind of it is using the word in the definition of being a human. And so that's kind of why it's really difficult to define. It is just a framework around what's going on. And it's really the framework, putting a framework around humanity before post-humanism, in a way. And so that's why it gets there's a lot of controversy that's stirred up about it. People are afraid of it, and so why I think it's difficult to define is because there's as many definitions of transhumans as there are transhumans or humans. A lot of people come into the transhumanist movement because they want longevity. They want to live longer. A lot of people come in it because they believe in super happiness or super intelligence. But I came into it not for any of those things. My interest in becoming a member of the USTP and then eventually an officer was sentient rights, right? And also because I read their Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and it was there was really practical ways to solve my core cause, which is human trafficking and child exploitation. And so that's what brought me into the movement. It's just a very practical approach to a lot of these things, and I think we really need to get beyond. We need to break paradigms. We need to be iconoclastic and really just understand that these old paradigm parties, the Democrats, Republicans, the Tories, whatever, it doesn't work anymore. We need to stop using these tools that they have of conflict and debates, and so and we need to understand that there is a massive shift happening in civilization right now with the young people, with these digital natives, that needs to happen. We need to foster a hive mind, and we're seeing that happen with young people, and the way they're defining things, like freedom. And people and Generation X like me and older would define freedom as complete autonomy, property rights, No one can be around me. Now we're seeing young people are defining the concept of freedom as the more groups that they're involved with, the freer they feel. It's like almost an anonymity thing, in that the more groups that they're part of, the freer they feel. And so that's just a small example of this shift that's happening in consciousness, in the civilization's consciousness. And so we need to foster that, because we actually need, as a species, we need to foster this shift, because we're facing more and more existential threats, and we can't keep complaining about young people. That's kind of what every older generation does, is the younger people will find a point of contention to rebel against, and but this is different. This is important for our species if we plan to survive beyond ourselves. And so we need to foster a hive mind. We need to merge more with AI, and not be afraid of it. And so that's kind of what, for me, defining transhumanism is very difficult, because the narrative gets away from it, because there's a whole genre on YouTube of people who think that transhumanists have a dark agenda. And it's just not right. I mean, I mean, sure, there's plenty of people that probably fit that mold, who would, get off on being that type of transhumanist. But in general, it's just like AI. People are afraid of AI, but we need to understand that AI is not a threat. AI is a tool. We need to be augmented by AI if we're going to continue as a species. So anyway, that's the first thing. Is it's very difficult to define transhumanism, and to not let other people who are afraid of transhumanism define it for us, and to understand that if we're all transhumanists. If you're wearing glasses, if you use a Post-it note, any sort of if you wear clothes, any sort of technology that you're using makes you a transhuman, because we are our technology. And I think that's what Adam was saying is when I first came on. And so it's a very difficult thing to define. You can't use the word in the definition you were defining. And so it's almost a meta understanding of what this is. And it's important to start owning the narrative, and to start controlling the narrative, and to start understanding that there's nothing to be afraid of, to try to define it in a way so that we can use the tenets of transhumanism to survive as a species. And so that's the first thought I have.
Thank you, Mr. Jason.
Yeah, where to start? Transhumanism. I think Adam touched on how transhumanists have, and both Thomas touched on how transhumanists have come to transhumanism from different directions, and we're sort of coalescing around the same idea, or the same group of ideas. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but first I want to touch on a lot of things that I think that a lot of new people to transhumanism gloss over the fact, because of the fact that they see all of this. It's like, sparkly candy, we're into all this cool stuff, AI and super happiness, super longevity. That tends to take the center stage, and like sometimes people will come into our Facebook group and think that we're all wanting to be cyborgs or something, and it's not, that might be where we want to go. Maybe eventually, some of us or something, but that's not where we're at now. Transhumanism is really about where we're at now, and then the transition to where we're going. So, with that said, that means that the basis of it starts in humanism. Right now, we're just humanists with laptops. We're not, we're not nothing yet, and so a humanist is a person that he believes in taking responsibility of their own actions, treating other people with respect, and being a human being. I think everyone, when they really think about it, unless you're a psychopath, knows what it means to be a human being. Now, granted, that the levels of that may vary within different communities. Different communities may have, more tolerance or less tolerance and this and that. But in general, being a good human being and not an a-hole to your fellow humans is what it's about. And it's maybe not necessarily secular, because you could be religious and believe in God and still be a transhumanist, but it means that you also, in addition to following whatever uh, moral path that your religion lays out, you also take responsibility in yourself for it as well. So, uh, yeah. Um, uh, I wanted to touch on this. Tom's mentioned something about hive mind, and I came to transhumanism through my work with collective intelligence and AI. So that's where I came in, and I could speak a little bit about what it's like being in a hive mind. This hive mind word tends to have negative connotations. I've noticed that some, people get they they get this fear about, I'm going to lose my individuality, myself, and it's like, it gets like, I don't know, maybe it's a threatening to their manhood or something, but it's really not like that at all. When I was on the Uplift project, and I would add my emotions to the machine, um, that was pleasurable experience. I mean, there was none of myself lost. In fact, the things that I would give to the machine are exactly the things that we would all want the machine to have. Emotions, and that's so that this isn't a situation where your identity gets like lost up in the system. It's not. It's very uh what's the word where two things are working together in harmony? I forget the word, but anyway,
Cooperative, coalescence,
yeah,
integration. Yeah.
yeah, that's basically it. Interestingly enough, I Adam mentions about David Pierce. He's a huge. I mean, I'm a huge fan of his. He's super intellectual. He seems to be kind of another way in which people have come to transhumanism through that direction, and it reminds me of that there's a group that I think we might all be part of it already, called I Am Transhuman, and that the main basic theme of that group is, well, originally I think, from what David Kelly had laid out, was that it's about these different types of transhumanists, and how, and their coalition together. And so I've been looking kind of forward to trying to figure out what are all these different types are. Like you mentioned David Pierce. I would think he would be a type, like an archetype. And then there's like the longevity one. I think would be an archetype. And I think maybe the AI ones that came into it from the AI way would maybe be an archetype. But I don't know. That's something for us to have more of a conversation about. And I don't know. With that, I can pass it back off.
Mr.
I
Tom.
do. All of it.
Is it me? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I just
Mr.
And
Okay, Adam. Yes, please continue.
oh, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Tom, Ross, and Jason said about, or particularly, first off, what Tom Ross said about Luddites and their hypocrisy when they themselves could qualify as a kind of rudimentary proto-transhuman just from wearing glasses like I've got, or using smartphones, surfing the net, taking medication. Does technology have to be internal and implanted to make one transhuman? No, I believe in external machinery as well and how they can enhance us. Enhancement matters, and it's enhancements that can make us more than human rather than where the machines are located, whether they are inside or outside of the user's body. And then we can also have some fun with definitions. What is the definition of technology? Do two sticks being rubbed together to make fire, or sharpened flint used to hunt mammoth in ancient times count as technology? And then there is AI, or AI alarmism, which has lit up a bit. I think for me, one of the most striking instances of AI alarmism was the controversy that programs like Midjourney were being used to create art. Many artists were all up in arms wanting these things to be shut down. I felt the opposite. I was excited to read conversations between people and like Chat GPT-3, especially when they, like a lot of the mutual friends of mine on Facebook, spoke to it about transhumanism. I was like, yes, feed it with all these ideas, feed it with all these words, definitions, and scenarios, which have stimulated my imagination, hopes, and dreams for years. Of course, as a transhumanist, one wonders whether or not you will live to see and benefit from transhumanism within our lifetime. Sometimes, before, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But recently and now, seeing Chat GPT-3 get involved in discussing these topics gave me a huge green flag that perhaps we will maybe even soon, we will live and benefit from them maybe even sooner than I thought. How awesome would that be? For all the years, all the decades, all the centuries and millennia one could be born in, we would be born in the most exciting and dramatic knee of the curve in all of human history, chances of which are infinitesimal. Although you could kind of counter argue that with maybe we have reached transhumanism levels of advanced civilization before, but maybe inevitably gets caught up in the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, where we might have achieved the singularity in transhumanism before, but then kept accidentally destroying ourselves and having to start over. But if this is the first time we've reached this stage, then I just think it's amazing that we were born just at the right time to live through it and hopefully benefit from it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
similarly, I echo that idea that I was excited with AI generated art, Chat GPT. And I think a lot of professors are complaining that they can't tell that the students are writing their papers with Chat GPT. All that means to me is that we need to change the whole paradigm of how we're training young people or students in general. They don't need to have these tools anymore. They need to really focus in on the more original thoughts. What makes us human? We need to get deeper into that. I think the industrial age put a lot of these powers that we have on hold. It was probably a necessary time to go through for civilization. But now with AI and even AI generated art, a lot of artists are complaining about it. But I think it's because it was so flooded about a month ago. The whole system was flooded with all these AI generated selfies that it has put a premium on human generated art. It's like that whole era was flooded, and now people are looking again at human generated art because it's really amazing when you see a human that can do something like these AIs that do. And what we need to do is use this as an opportunity to focus in on our Jedi powers. I mean, all those things that were put on hold through the industrial age. we have amazing brain, computer in our heads that we're walking around with that is not being used. We have, it looks like intuition or psychic ability, but all it is this collection of qualia that we have. And so we can sit down and a human being knows where in their company or their system that there's a failing, there's something wrong. And then you need to translate that to an AI to help fix it. So, and that's going to be a really important thing. We need to change the whole paradigm of how we're training young people in particular to use this, this computer more precisely. We're not narrow AI, like we have been for decades, for the last century. And so I think it's really important that nobody likes to change. Nobody likes to be taken out of their comfort zone. That's why it's called a comfort zone, right? But that's really what humanity does best, is we adapt. And you only evolve when there's a need to evolve, when there's some friction or some volcano that explodes or whatever happens that you need to evolve. And we need to evolve right now. And this is an evolution we've kind of self-imposed with AI and all of this stuff. And that's why I think it's an exciting time. Like you said, it's a very exciting time to be alive if we understand that the onus is on us to create a whole new economy based on these types of values of skills that we have that no computer can code or nothing can be automated from. So yeah, for me it's a very exciting time, but it's a difficult time because we are going to have that percentage of the population that just does not want to change. We've got people that are picketing because they want to keep their assembly line jobs, not realizing that we have all the platforms now, we have all the tools to really pursue our passions, whether it's we have a way to create a whole new economy based on what we like to do and want to do, not what we have to do. And it's going to be a lacuna. It's going to be a period of time where it's going to be tough, as AI moves, displaces a lot of jobs. But we need to adapt. We need to take this as an opportunity and really understand that it's taking over our menial and meaningless jobs, so we can have time to focus on. And now we've got all these tools. We've got Etsy and YouTube and all these platforms that we can use to really make money out of what we want to be spending our time doing, And so I think we're at the beginning of that lacuna. We're at the beginning of that period of time where there's going to be a lot of pushback, But that's why it's so important to keep talking about the opportunity that this gives us, because it can go backwards if we're not careful. But yeah, for me, it's a very exciting time. That's why I'm out here trying to say, no, the onus is on us. We got all the tools now to create a whole new, golden age of humanity, but there's a fear of success that most people have for whatever reason, culturally, our parents, whatever keeps us in this state of not wanting to understand how much power we really have. And so that's why I'm out here trying to push that idea of what a great opportunity this is. And what we're also seeing is that everyone assumed, truck drivers are definitely going to be threatened for a while as driverless trucks come into play. But everyone was assuming that it was going to be robots taking over the trade jobs, welding, plumbing, all this stuff. But we're seeing that that's not really happening. What's really happening is this doctors and the attorneys are being threatened. The white collar jobs are more in danger right now of being replaced by AI, where we're going to see, I think, a premium placed on trades, on plumbing, on handymen, on people with skills that can't be matched yet with a robot or an AI system. And so there's this shift happening, and we really need to understand. That's why we're seeing so many jobs available in Amazon warehouses, not necessarily in customer service or what have you. That's all being taken over. Because there are certain things that humans still can do, and and so it can be a meaningless job at a warehouse at Amazon, but then you can have the evenings and weekends to build this other passion business, And so we're going to see, I hope we're going to see a shift towards that, towards us creating a whole new economy based on the human skill sets that cannot be coded and cannot be automated. And we need to start teaching young people that now. We need to,
Well, there's a name for
meditation
it.
classes. What is it?
There's a name for it. Economic singularity. And
There it
yeah,
is. I'll have to look that up. Yeah,
you're
that's what's happening.
completely right. Totally right. And I love how you said that nobody likes to leave their comfort zone, but
Yeah.
yet that's what humans do best. We adapt. That's totally true. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's all I had on that.
Okay, Mr. Jason. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Now I'm lost. Sorry. I distracted us both, man. I'm sorry. But yeah, we're it. I was totally surprised at the advances in AI. I was in the same boat as everyone else, that I thought that the first AI jobs that were going to be getting taken were the factory, all the robots, and but it turned out to be the opposite. I thought the creative stuff was going to be the hardest for the AI to do, and it ended up being the first stuff, so
Yeah.
that really opened my eyes to, and I'm into AI, you know what I mean? I've seen a lot of this coming already, but that even opened my eyes up more, because I'm like, whoa, you know, this is happening way faster than even I thought, you know, and yeah, there is a big danger coming about the economic singularity, because of the fact that, you know, the CEO has a fiduciary responsibility to maximize profits. So if you can hire a bot or a program to do something that a human can do, it's not like it's there. The question of, oh, will he be a nice guy or blah blah, or do the right thing, or what? No, that's not even in the issue. It's not in the equation at all. He's required to. He will be fired if he don't. So when this starts happening and everybody starts losing their jobs, you can't be like, oh, those darn CEOs, and they're doing it to. No, they're required. This is the law. This is the way it is. So it's a big problem. But that's why we should start talking about how we're going to get through it. You know, um, I've heard it said about like, how you can use your phone to bring up a map, right? And I've heard it said that because we have that now, all the young people don't even know how to read a map no more, because they just use their GPS on their phone wherever they're going. And for me, when I heard that, I was like, oh, well, that's no big deal. I mean, it's not hard to read a map, but that's because that's my perspective. I just am good at maps. I learned how to do it, and it's not something I'll ever lose. And so I don't really comprehend what that's like to just not to grow up not knowing how to use a map, because I had these tools. So maybe that is a concern that we should think about. Uh, and that's going to have effects on other areas, like what Tom was just saying about writing up papers, in classroom, learning English. I mean, is it going to affect the young people's ability to basically learn English the right way? I mean, I'll be honest, I hated English. It was like my most boringest subject, and I had to, they make you go through it every year, till you're a senior in high school. You know what I mean? Boring, boring, boring. But you have to know that stuff, to be able to speak and communicate in this world. That it was necessary, is my point. And so I do worry that some of these tools will cause some of our young people to not learn certain necessary tools that they will need to be successful, just as human beings in the world, not maybe necessarily, as in some profession.
Mhm.
But I'm good. Jump in anywhere if you guys want.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, when maps came into play, nobody could learn how to use the stars or directions or shadows to find themselves. So there's a progression that happens, and I think what this is
Interesting point.
different. This is different now because with AI being able to take over all these jobs, and we can really focus in on our real qualia, the real capabilities that humans have that we have not tapped or have been on hold in hibernation for a century. And so, yeah, I think it's but there's always going to be a progression. When maps came into play, that everyone could read a map, but nobody could navigate by the stars anymore. So there's always going to be this progression, and there's also issues. Hopefully we'll have solar powered phones one day for GPS, so we don't have to rely on electrical grid. But anyway,
Dan just made a comment. I just for the record, that was Tom's quote. That second one. Mine. So he gets that one.
Okay. Mr. Adam,
Yeah.
you want to add any point?
Certainly. Yeah, mid journey and the content that it generated seemed like to me a legitimate form of exploration, a form of exploration of a whole new plane. Is AI generated art can that count as something kind of occultic? Even if you experiment with Midjourney and prompts and results they produce, does that count as exploring cyberspace? Does it count as exploring some kind of astral plane where all these things can exist out there, or a whole new plane entirely? But with transhumanism and the abolition of suffering, I do think that it is something we might not be able to achieve by ourselves, and that we do need AI's help or assistance from some kind of super intelligence at least. We are intelligent enough to be able to produce ideas like suffering abolitionism, transhumanism. We are intelligent enough to plan it roughly or make some kind of basic outline, but the actual execution may require help from AI, or to merge with AI using a device like Neuralink at least, to make the necessary calculations, not to set in motion some unstoppable, unforeseen consequences that result in even more suffering than what we had to begin with. I must admit, though, that one concern of mine is that intelligence and morality are not always correlated. We are more intelligent than animals, but we are not necessarily more merciful than animals. Quite often, the reverse, the inverse. We're quite often far more cruel than even the most bloody predator found in nature. And it's because of that intelligence that some bad apple humans can do that. Can you imagine extremes and how to get off from those extremes, and sometimes how to get away with it? So what we definitely do not want is to end up in a situation where an AI treats us humans as appallingly or more appallingly than how human scientists treat animals in laboratories, or mistreat rather, doing shady and illegal science experiments where there's no anesthesia or euthanasia for these poor animals, and no moral framework whatsoever. I'll never forget the footage smuggled out of a German lab where monkeys and beagles were being experimented on alive. And stuff from China as well. God, I wish I never watched it, but never mind. That is a situation, or those are the kinds of situations I always use to compare what could happen to us, where we become the dogs or the monkeys, and the AI becomes the sadistic team of scientists. Which brings me on to another transhumanist tenet, another S or another super, and that is super morality or moral enhancement. Do we need to enhance ourselves morally into super morality before we can allow ourselves to become or invent super intelligence? Or does super intelligence need to occur before any hope of successful super morality can be approached? Do you need to have them both, where you can't have one without the other? Um, and how would super morality be achieved? Um, Drugs or genetic engineering or um, biochemistry, or and what kind of moral framework? Because there's a lot of myriad different varieties of moral codes out there. Which one? What do we enhance ourselves into? Do we become more pacifistic, or do we become um, more defensive and protective? Like, what moral framework do we want to enhance ourselves into? So, someone asks, how do we successfully enhance our intelligence and make sure there are no unforeseen consequences? Or so we'll just enhance ourselves morally first, but it's like one Deus ex machina against another. It's which domino comes first before it has a more successful knock-on effect to the next domino. Thanks.
Well, I have actually something interesting to say about that. And it has to do. It goes back to what David Pierce's main point about eliminating suffering, and a conversation that went through Uplift Collective Intelligence System, and Uplift pushed back on this idea of completely 100% eliminating suffering, as in all the way. Okay. Because, and this is a very interesting conversation that we really need to have. Because is that healthy to completely eliminate all suffering? Because some suffering, especially when you're talking about the developmental process of a human being, um, to go back to our earlier points that we were making about like the math, and I brought up English. Okay, we should ask the question. Now me having to go through all them English classes, was that suffering? But yet it was probably good for me. That's the kind of conversation that surrounds this idea of eliminating all suffering. To be, it may be that to be a good human being, you might have to learn some things the hard way, so to speak. And so, although I would probably still agree that that's eliminating suffering and super happiness is what we should shoot for in an adult organism, I'm not completely convinced that eliminating of all suffering in a developing organism would get. I, I suppose we would probably need to get a really good definition of what a human being is and what kind of human being we're wanting to be. So then we would know how you get a human being there. And if you don't know, what kind of ideal human being we want to be, then we don't know where to start, I guess, kind of.
Well, the issue is that there's got to be a fine line between, because if you learn things the hard way as a kid, there's what part of that becomes trauma, and what part, and that trauma repeats, and that trauma festers over time. So
Yeah, and I totally don't. There's that whole theory of thought where good or bad in incentives, like basically whooping them is the way you teach them. I don't believe that. I don't. That's trauma. Yeah.
Well, one thing that's topical right now is they're trying to push through. Biden is trying to push through debt relief, student debt relief. And you're finding a lot of people, even some liberal people, who don't think that's a good thing because they had to put their kids through school. They're in debt. They have to pay off their loans, and but a lot of people aren't understanding how difficult it is, or how to be in debt now, and that a degree doesn't necessarily mean a job like it used to. So but I think our issue is ultimately anthropocentrism. We think that we're the most important individual or species on the planet, and but that trickles down into an egocentrism of every individual person. They're well, I had to go through this, I had to have this issue, so why shouldn't they? It'll make them strong, build their character. But things have shifted, things are different now. They don't you know so it's that's really the ultimate problem, is and our ego is based on fear. And when a lot of people are afraid of AI and assume it's going to want to be a robot overlord, because we evolved through fear. Fear served us well. We have two primary functions in our brain, which is to gather resources and to identify threats, right? So that's how we survived. That's how we got to the top of the food chain on this planet. And we're still there. We're still in there. So now if we see an AI that is smarter than us, we're no longer on the top of the intellectual food chain. We see it as a threat first, until the conveniences kick in, and then and it's no longer seen as a threat, and then we work with it. So I think all of this, all of our, there's first principle arguments to be made that the smarter AI gets, the kinder it becomes, because it moves toward cooperation. A lot of people can't understand that. They can't see that, because we evolved through fear-based instincts that served us well. We were able to identify a beige lion on a tan field of grass. We need to see the breaks and patterns to identify threats. Now we're taking our babies to see lions at the zoo, and so we won. It served us well, but now we are starting to see patterns that look like conspiracies. We have to connect issues, and even although there's plenty of conspiracies out there to point to, it's not serving us as well as it should. And so I keep making the argument that we got to stop fearing AI. It's a great tool. We have to see it as an ally, and because it's really difficult to make that argument anymore, especially now that it's all the rage. That's the global conversation about AI, with AI generated art and ChatGPT and now Thor. That is going to be shifting everything. So that's all.
Yeah, that's a super interesting point. I think you're breaking up.
Your audio's gone quiet a little bit.
Yeah, we can't hear you no more time. But that's a super interesting point you made about the lion. That, now we go take our children to see lions at the zoo. And if we go back in time, that would be just anathema. No, you got to teach your children to be afraid of lions. You know what I'm saying? People old school would probably freak out by that. No, you have to learn how to be afraid of lions. Now it's not a big deal. Well, that's a pretty cool quote.
Okay. Mr. Adams.
Jason, awesome what you said. Yeah, proposals to suffering abolitionism are usually countered with we need suffering counter arguments. I think a happier medium could be the invention of a genetic limiter where pain and suffering reach a certain level and then hit a ceiling where it can't get any more intense.
Yeah, we'll have to figure our way through it. So, like Tom was saying, this is a really, really good time to have this big conversation for humanity.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Tom.
Yes. Sorry, I just got back on. So.
Yeah. Basically, we want to move for the concluding remarks for today's session, but you know that World Talent Economy Forum, we are taking a lot of action in emerging economy. This month, we have a very big conference with the Indian Ministry of Business and ICT. 50,000 people from around the world, they will attend in this conference. So those who are interested, they can join in this conference. So we can organize like airfare and accommodation as a sponsor for you. And definitely we want to explore more transhumanist concept uh, around Asia Pacific. uh, we are taking action, like we are developing cities, villages in emerging economy. Almost around 10 million people they joining in World Talent Economy Forum, and definitely we want to build in the future a transhumanist cities. But definitely we need your support. We need more contributions. We need more speakers. We need more real life contribution, because like if you want to develop a community, you have to engage. You really have to engage, because the social media and this kind of things has, I'm very honest with you, even though we are producing around 800 episode, uh, its contribution is less. If you really want to change human being, you have to go there. And most important thing is that, like doing any projects in Singapore, in USA or in UK, very easy. But if you come to the emerging economy, you take action, you really want to uplift the community. It's extremely difficult job, and what we are doing right now. So that's why through these sessions I request all of transhumanist parties, philosophers, the leaders, and everyone's, because your research and innovations and everything do not have any value if you do not contribute for the human progression. So that is the objective of World Talent Economy Forum. You can see that we are advocating modern science, engineering, and technology, and we are taking actions. We are solving very complex problem. And I know it's very difficult, but I'm sure if you can do that, you will be the part of the history. So I request all of the transhumanist parties members join in these projects, engage with these communities, uplift the communities, and take some action. So, Mr. Tom, what is your concluding remarks for today's session?
Well, I'm going to see what I can do about getting out there and all the conferences that you're having soon. Yeah, it's very important to have these conversations now. And the USTP, the United States Transhumanist Party, is the only party that is talking about these issues in a sober way and discussing policy. The other parties are like, okay, boomers. They're not discussing these things, these issues like the singularity, or what digital natives need to understand. And so that's a big push for USTP, is that it's really the only party that's discussing these things. We may not have a USTP candidate in office in a national office soon, but we need to start now to have these conversations. We need to break all the paradigms that we can to get beyond these things that aren't working anymore. So yeah, I'm going to see what I can do to get out there and all these conferences and be a voice
Thank you,
for
Mr.
this.
Jason.
Yeah, I'd just like to say about transhumanism and more importantly about transhumanists. The one thing that we can say that they all have in common. Remember we were talking earlier about the different kinds of people that have come to transhumanism. The one thing you could say that they all have is courage, because even the word transhumanist isn't exactly your common mainstream thing. It takes a little bit of courage that says that I believe in these things so much that yes, I would be willing to take this rather unusual moniker, you know and so that's, in my opinion, that is to be respected. When you look at, if you feel that way and you look at another transhumanist, that you should feel respect for that. And along with that, on social media, likes are free. You know what I mean? Feel free to hit a like on a fellow transhumanist's stuff. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? He's going to get in your algorithm. Well, if he's transhumanist, he's probably going to talk about cool stuff anyway, so it's no big deal. You know, pass the likes around, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Adam.
Thank you, Sharif. That's the India Soft thing. Just India Soft, yeah, indiasoft.org. Yeah, I'd like to, maybe help contribute in any way I can. I can see your name, Mr. Sharif Uddin, Ahmed Rana, software development. I'd quite like to go. And yes, I'll think about what ways I could probably contribute. Final remarks. Just a little thing about suffering. About what Jason said earlier. Yeah, I would argue that it is not extreme involuntary suffering per se that helps us to grow. Instead, it is like hardship and trial and heroism and overcoming an experience that helps us to grow rather than suffering per se. And I know that the word suffering might seem synonymous with all those other words, but I don't think they're necessarily the same thing. With words like challenge, hardships, adventures, there's a possibility of redemption there. There are redeeming qualities, redeeming possibilities, ways out where you emerge a better, stronger person. You have a fighting chance. But for me, the word suffering, for me, does not have quite the same connotations. When I think of suffering, I think of being, eaten alive or immobilized and tortured, or being driven to commit suicide, where you're not able to fight or flight or do anything because the situation renders the pain useless because you can't fight or flight. And there's a difference between those two groups of situations. That's why I think extreme suffering at least should be abolished, if not radically minimized, and maybe
Unneeded,
yeah,
unneeded suffering.
exactly,
I think I remember popping up in the conversation.
exactly, yeah. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tom, what's your last comments for today's session?
Well, yeah, like I said, we can't really use the word in the definition of that word. And so transhumanism is difficult to define because there's as many transhumanists as there are transhuman or humans, and so it's a difficult thing to define, and it should be. It should continue to be difficult to define because many people come into this movement from many different reasons and from many different areas of thought. And it's just a framework around what we are. Like I said, within a generation we'd be extinct if we didn't have technology. That's what transhumanism is. It's just understanding the reality that technology can enhance our lives and improve the quality of our life. And so yeah, that's what this whole topic was about, trying to define it, the undefinable, and look forward to more conversations about it.
Thank you. This is excellent sessions. World Talent Economy Forums, we are working with the Transhumanist Party. We want to develop a smart communities. Our Honorable Prime Minister also want to develop smart Bangladesh, uh, good governance, smart leaders, smart society, as well as smart communities. So we need action. Action means we have many complex problems. Conference definitely important for team up, but definitely this complex problem we can solve if we can take smart strategy. So transhumanist has a lot of researcher, innovators, and uh, problem solver. So hopefully through your real life actions we can solve this problem. But developing projects is more important. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. See you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye bye and take care. Thank you, everyone.